episode of my 5 Arts podcast, where I talk about all things knitting, crocheting, and whatever else I come up with in the future. Today it is very grey and rainy. It was already grey and rainy the last few days, so I kind of feel like I should take my sweaters out of the closet and listen to folklore and drink my black tea here. I don't feel like it's about to be summer and I should be working on summer garments, but here we are, and summer garments is what I'm mostly going to be talking about. So I have one finished object to share today, and I think 2 whips and some acquisitions, so let's get into it. My first and only finished object today I actually don't have with me because I did give it away, but it was the Poet Scarf by Sari Nordlund, which I was working on mostly over the last month. It is an all-over lace scarf that is part of a design series by Sari Nordlund, and I think all of the designs are called something with poet or poetry, of like one pattern repeat. It kind of looks a little leafy, I would say, and I made it as a gift knit for Mother's Day. I used the recommended yarn, which is Knitting for Olive Pure Silk and Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair, and I got the Pure Silk in Putty and the Soft Silk Mohair in Cream. And even though the colors didn't quite look like I imagined from the picture online, the combination of them still turned out very, very beautiful, and it was basically what I was going for, which was an off-white color that could really go with anything. And I also used the recommended needle size for once, which I don't usually do, but I just started without making a gauge swatch because I figured it's a scarf. How bad can it be if it's a little big or a little small? And I actually ended up having quite a bit of yarn left over. I think I had a tiny bit of the soft silk mohair, but like almost 10 grams of the pure silk. So I don't know what happened there, but it's fine. I think I can make maybe a little headband with it or something. I think the last time I showed it here, I was over halfway done on it. So the pattern consists of 4 charts. You work the first and the last chart once, that is just the tip of the little scarf. And then both charts in the middle, you work them twice, one time working the pattern repeat only once and one time working it twice. And I think I was done working the 3rd chart for the 2nd time. So at that point I had already figured out all of the stitches. I was very acquainted with the pattern, so I mean, I didn't really encounter any problems with the pattern at all in general, but especially since the last time I gave an update, it was smooth sailing. It was really just me finishing everything. And I really enjoyed working on the pattern a lot. It was relatively complicated, not necessarily in skill level required. So none of the stitches are complicated in any sense of the word. I had done all of the stitches individually before. But you always need to be counting because the entire width of the pattern or of the scarf is charted. So you very much need to keep in mind where you are and count your stitches. So for me, I had a bit of trouble doing something at the same time, which actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because in the beginning I was a little bit upset about it because I was kind of used to watching my videos while I was knitting or being on a call. And then I thought, this is kind of annoying to do because I can only ever pick it up if I do nothing else. But then it actually became something I was really enjoying and looking forward to wake up in the morning, have a very slow morning, have a cup of coffee, knit on my scarf, maybe have some instrumental music playing in the background, but it was really my calm time that I enjoyed quite a bit. So I finished the scarf a few days before Mother's Day, then I wet blocked it and I let it dry flat. And then I actually had some days to wear it myself because I really wanted to try the soft silk mohair by Knitting for Olive. I hadn't really used it before, and I'm thinking about maybe making a sweater with it in the future, but I've heard that some people have problems having it closer to their neck because they're a bit sensitive to mohair. So I really wanted to try how I do with that before I buy a sweater quantity of a quite expensive yarn. So I wore the scarf some days myself and I did really well with it. It didn't annoy me at all. It didn't feel scratchy. So I think in the future I will definitely use it to make some garments for myself. So I was able to give it away for Mother's Day. It was a very well received gift. And I really enjoyed working on this. As I said, I think the result turned out very beautiful. The only real issue I have with it is totally my fault, and that is the I-cord around, because it has an I-cord all around the scarf. So for some reason when I knit I-cord, I pull it very tight. I really need to work on my tension there. I don't know why I do that, but that means that the I-cord that is around the scarf is a bit tighter than the middle of it. So when I pulled on the edges of the scarf, it would curl up a little bit. And depending on how you wear it, you can kind of see it. If you let the triangular part flow, lay down your back, It is a little bit visible, but it was still fine. Like, it isn't a huge issue. Just if I were to do it again, I would definitely pay more attention to that. Another small issue that I had with it, it's not really an issue, but it just kind of bothered me while I was working on the scarf, is that on the back side of the scarf there are these stockinette lines that run down the length of the scarf, and when the holes in the scarf from the lace, like when you do the yarn overs in the lace, you create this little hole, and when it gets close to that line, the line becomes a little bit wonky, or the stitches there are a bit bigger than the other stitches. And in the beginning I thought I had made a mistake on it, and I was a little confused what happened, and then I thought, I don't know, maybe it'll block out, so I blocked it, and it did help a little bit, but it didn't fully go away. So it's just visible when you look at the back side of the scarf, which, I mean, nobody ever looks at a scarf that way, you know. When you like wear a scarf, you can't really, I don't know, tell the front from the back, or you look at an individual stitch that closely. So it's not really an issue. It was just kind of confusing me a bit while I was knitting it, and it's, I don't know, not 100% optimal, but obviously not really avoidable if you want to include the lace pattern. But in general, I would definitely recommend this pattern. I think it produced an absolutely beautiful result. I think it was very fun to follow. It was fairly easy to figure out for something that does look quite intricate. So as I said, I was new to knitting lace, and I definitely had no problem following the pattern at any point. And I actually have a project vlog up on my page about the scarf, so if you want to see more of the process, you can check that out. For my first bit, I'd like to talk about my self-drafted summer top that I'm working on. It is a top that consists of two panels. So there's a back panel that is blank and has a contrasting color I-cord edge, and then for the front panel it also has the same I-cord edge, and it has a lobster down the side here. Don't ask me why I'm doing a lobster, I just decided to do a lobster. And then both panels are attached at the shoulder seam, and that leaves them with a little bit of a gap like here on the side of the body. And I plan to close that gap with some I-cord ties. I'm using belle for this, which is 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen. So a very summer appropriate fiber that I'm excited to wear in the upcoming season. And I'm knitting this on 3.5mm needles. I think in the last episode I had just finished my back panel. It still exists, it looks like this. Here again you can see the issue of me pulling my I-cord too tight, I think, but it should be fine once I attach the ties. But yes, looks like this. It's kind of, it's not really cropped, but it's also not necessarily full length. It's like somewhere in between, which I kind of gravitate towards right now. And I had also finished my color work chart. So I had a little bit of trouble of getting a lobster on the chart in a way where it would fit and also be on the side of the top, but still would like keep all of its arms and claws and stuff. But I had finished that last time, and I did start the front panel. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I also stopped in the middle of the row for some reason, so it's kind of difficult to show. But I did start the color work chart, and the rest of the top is just blank white. And other than that, I'm knitting the I-cord and everything the same way I did the back panel, which was the main reason why I did the back panel first. I just wanted to figure out the shaping and the I-cord and everything, and then worry about putting a design on it. I honestly didn't work on this too much because it did become a bit of an annoying project to be working on, because, well, you already have 3 skeins of yarn attached by default when you're doing the white backing and then the I-cord on the sides. And then I also added in this lobster, and as you can see down here, the antennas start quite early. So I was trying to do intarsia here, or I did intarsia here, I didn't just try, it was just difficult because I wanted to avoid to have these like very long floats in the middle here. But that meant that at some point I had the white attached, then I had a red attached for each of the I-cords, then I had 2 more reds attached for each of the antenna, and then I attached 2 more reds for the claws. So I was working with like 7 balls of yarn attached to this, and it was just a nightmare to figure out how to not, like, I was trying to not tangle anything and it just wasn't working. At some point I gave up, like somewhere here, and I just cut all of the reds off and started using 1 ball of red and just doing stranded color work, which it looks like this in the back now. So I kind of figured out the problem of having too many skeins of yarn attached. I mean, I still have 4, which is still quite a bit, but definitely more manageable than 7. However, ever since then, another problem has come up, and that is my floats a little bit. I've done stranded color work quite a few times before, but I've always used an animal fiber or just a more stretchy fiber like merino. So when I was doing my floats, I would just kind of hold them into position, try to not make them too tight, and then just continue knitting. So that's what I was doing here as well, or at least for the start. However, since this is mainly cotton and also the other materials aren't stretchy either, that has left me with a colorwork section that is relatively tight. So I feel like you can maybe even see at the bottom of the claw here that there's almost like too much fabric of the red on the strands. Like I can move the fabric around a little bit and it will create these little folds because the strands are too short apparently, which was not something I really considered. So up here, like the sections I worked more recently, I let the yarn for the float actually hang a little bit loose before continuing to knit with it, and I feel like the tension is way better there. I just didn't know that I would have to let them that much more loose when I was using a fiber that wasn't as stretchy. And that means that I'm not entirely happy with what the claws look like down here. It's not, I'm debating on whether it's a big enough problem to unravel and start over, because I have made quite a bit of progress and it would just be annoying to start over, especially because working that part wasn't that fun. So I've honestly just put this aside some days ago and haven't picked it up since then, because I was kind of frustrated with the whole project and didn't really know what to do. Because I know that, like, realistically I should just unravel it and start over, because as soon as you think you maybe should, you'll regret if you don't. But at least I'm happy with my back panel and my colorwork chart, so I'm hoping that as soon as I start over, this will go over relatively quickly. My next WIP is something I already mentioned in my plans last time, and that is the Madeleine sweater by Pernille Larsen. It is an all-over lace sweater that has this little, I guess you can call it a house, this little house motif everywhere. And I'm actually making this as part of a knit along, so that's also how I found this pattern, and I've been really excited to make it. It looks very cool, and I'm very excited to knit lace now that I've finished my poet scarf. After much consideration, I am making a size medium. I was kind of unsure where to go sizing wise, because my bust circumference just barely fell into the range for a medium. If it would have been, I think, a centimeter larger, I would have been in the large size range. So I wasn't quite sure where to go, because I do like my things to be a little oversized, and I am using a less stretchy fiber than what is recommended, so I thought maybe I should go for a large. And then while I was debating, they added more pictures on Ravelry of a person wearing the garment. So before it was just the sweater on a hanger, and then they added more pictures with an actual person. But on her it looked really large, so then I thought, maybe not, maybe I should go for mediums to not make it that oversized, because that was also not what I was going for. And I kept going back and forth, and the project photos of the other people also didn't really help me, because I feel like a lot of people made adjustments to this. So they made it a shirt or they cropped it, and it was just really hard for me to figure out the sizing. And then I realized that this little house motif that I showed earlier, if you do a size large, you have to work it 5.5 times until you hit the neck here. And if you do a size medium, you work it 5 times until you hit the neck. So for the size large, you kind of like cut off the house in the middle here and then start the neck. And I didn't really like the way that looked, so I decided to make a medium because of that. I don't know, but so far it's looking big enough to me. And I am also making this in drop spell actually, because I had just started working with that yarn for my other project and it was working out well. I liked it, and I really wanted a more summery fiber than the no waste wool that was recommended, so I could put it on immediately when I finish. And so far it's working out well. I only really had an issue while figuring out the gauge, because the gauge that was given in the project or in the pattern is a gauge that is knitted in the lace pattern here. But obviously when I'm shopping for yarn, the gauge that they give there is in stockinette, so I had a little bit of trouble comparing the two, but it worked out okay. I'm definitely off with this. So I had to size down my needle quite a bit. The suggested needle size is 4.5 and I'm working on 3mm right here. So I did quite a few swatches until I hit gauge, but I think this is relatively close. I think I might be like half a stitch off or something, which is pretty good. I'm also unfortunately keeping this on a 60 centimeter needle because for some reason I only had 3mm needles that were either 60 centimeters or 120 centimeters long. And I really don't like to work on such a long cable, especially since the circumference of this is supposed to be 114. So I would have just had to like pull my piece with every stitch. So I went with the 60 centimeters, and it's not optimal, especially not to show it, but yeah, I guess this is what we're working with now. So far I've only been working on one chart, so I'm not really sure how much of an opinion I can give on the pattern itself. I've read through the whole thing and it sounds doable to me, but for the beginning of the sweater, so you work it bottom up, you only really work one little lace chart that's like 19 stitches long and has this little house on it. And then I work that for my size 12 times in the round, and then the whole house I work 3 times before the next section starts. And right now I'm done working it once and I'm like halfway done working it the second time. So I still have like 1.5 times to go with the little house. And I don't know, it's becoming a little bit repetitive. It's like barely more effort than a stockinette project, especially because many of the rows are almost entirely stockinette. And the lace is also, it's not complicated because it's so few stitches, and even the stitches, like the 19 stitches that the chart has, they are symmetrical because, well, it's a house, so you only really need to remember half of them and then flip it in your head, and then you do that 12 times. So by the end of it, it's like basically like working stockinette. It's relatively mindless. There are some goofy decreases in it. For example, instead of doing a slip slip knit, you slip one, then you knit one, and then you bind one off, which I'm not sure why, but there's also some decreases where you bind off more than one stitch. So it's a little more complicated there than it has to be, I feel like sometimes. But it's not difficult by any means. So if you've done a regular bind off before, you should definitely be able to figure that out. I kind of feel like this project is going to take me a little while. I'm not quite sure why. I think just because right now it's a bit repetitive, and after knitting my first lace project with the poet scarf, I thought that was really engaging, like really needed a lot of brain power for me to work on this, while this is, as I said, almost as easy as stockinette. So I kind of did a bit of a 180 there in lace knitting. So it's definitely not as interesting as I thought it would be. I'm not necessarily disappointed with it. It's still a fun project to make. I just kind of didn't expect it to be this way. If I want a more complicated project right now, I am picking up the top that I'm making a lot more than this. This is almost like my easy grab and go project, which is kind of funny because I was intending it to be the other way around. But so far it's honestly been really fun. I can keep up a conversation while working on this. I think the color looks pretty good on me, I'm hoping, and I'm excited to have this as a finished object as well. So I guess we'll see how long I need. For my plans and acquisitions, I have one yarn to share that I got a sweater quantity of, and it is this one. It's called Høst by Camarose. I'm probably butchering the name, I don't know how it's pronounced. But I fell in love with this yarn the first time I saw it somewhere online while I was shopping for yarn. And I've wanted to find a project to make something with this ever since. So I'm making the Elliot sweater by Wool and the Gang with it, at least my rendition of it, because I really wanted to do a wrap top, like one of the ones you can tie on the sides. And I was busy on Ravelry for like 2 hours trying to find the perfect pattern that looked exactly like I wanted it, and I just couldn't. And the closest thing I could find was the Elliot sweater. Even though it's not a wrap top, it is a sweater, so it just does have those 2 front panels, but the ribbing is like attached, so you can't tie it anywhere. And my plan is to adjust it in a way where I can tie it in the front. So I did download the pattern. It is a free pattern, which is nice. However, it is, I'm just gonna say, interestingly written. I don't really like the way it is written. If other people do, then okay, but it really confused me because it is written in steps, so it isn't really structured like a normal knitting pattern. They just put like steps from, I don't know, 1 to whatever, and then they'll, I don't know, step 21 will then be, now repeat steps 19 to 20 7 more times, and then after that it'll say, now repeat steps 15 to 19 5 more times, and if you're size 2, then repeat steps this to that this many more times. And it is really confusing to read to me because I'm just constantly trying to figure out which step I'm supposed to be on, how often I'm supposed to do it. if it even applies to my size. So like, I was just confused reading it, and I did actually really want to make this, so I sat down for like a few hours and I rewrote the entire pattern in like my little Word document to be a normal knitting pattern. So now it is 2.5 pages long and I can actually read it, which is very nice. But it took me quite a bit to get through that. So just as a fair warning, if you're trying to make that pattern, you might have to invest some time into figuring out what the hell it is trying to tell you if you're used to a normal pattern. I don't know, maybe if you're like a new knitter and you've never seen a pattern before, it would help you. But even that I'm questioning, to be honest. I don't know. I find it very confusing. But yeah, the yarn that they're recommending is a wool and the gang yarn, but it matches almost perfectly with all of the qualities that this one has. So they're the exact same weight and also have a very similar gauge. So when I saw that, I got very excited and I got this color called tranebær, I guess. And this is a very interesting yarn to me because it has a weird composition. First of all, it is 75% cotton and then 16% wool and 9% cashmere. And according to the website, I'm not really sure if I can see it, but according to the website, it is a blown yarn where the chain is made out of cotton and then the other fibers like the wool and the cashmere are blown into it, which is just confusing but interesting and cool. And I think it would actually be the perfect yarn to make like a transitional sweater for me, because where I live, it does get cool in the winters, but not really that cold. Like it rarely ever gets under 0 degrees here. So I don't really need a lot of like warm wool sweaters, but this is kind of perfect because it is mostly cotton, but it does have all of the cool qualities that animal fibers have because it has the wool and the cashmere still. So it is very fluffy and soft and nice to touch. I think the only really cotton quality it has is that it's not as warm and that it's not as stretchy. But I've already made a little swatch that looks very beautiful and it is very fun to work with. I'm also really relieved that it still looks good when knitted up, because I've made some bad experiences with buying variegated yarn and then knitting it and then not liking the way it looks knitted up. But I really like this, and I now have a swatch. I have a pattern that works, so I basically only need to cast on, which I think I will do relatively soon. Usually I don't really like to have more than 2 whips at a time. None of my whips right now are easy really. I think I want to start this as well, maybe take it on vacation just to have something to grab and go and just knit on and have an easy time. Other than that, I still want to make the Esther jacket. I know I keep saying that and then I never cast it on, but it just always keeps getting put on the back burner because it is a bit of a warm jacket and it's just not suitable for the season. But I do have the yarn for it and I will make it. And I also have some random skeins of leftover yarn laying around that I want to make some small miscellaneous items with that are also more winter accessories than anything else, like fingerless gloves or a hat or something. So these are still in my plans, but I don't know when I'll start on them. So that was all that I had to share today. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Definitely like and subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know in the comments how many whips you have and what the whip amount that you're comfortable at is. And I will see you next time.